Before we get this show started, let's hear from our sponsor. Angler's Coffee roasts a full range of coffees with one goal in mind, delivering excellent coffee to every single angler. And I'm one of those anglers who loves Angler's Coffee. Great tasting, robust, and good to go. And if you haven't noticed, this is Dave from the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I'm here because I'm good friends with Greg, and we are both supporting a great coffee company, and you should too. Angler's Coffee just released a new subscription program, and you can get 22% off, not just 20% off. We're going the extra distance here. 22% off of this box and all products at anglerscoffee.com. Just use the coupon code FFI20 at checkout to get 22% off of great coffee today. That's anglerscoffee.com.
Hey, what's up, listeners? Before we begin today's podcast, just a bit of housekeeping here for you. And an amazing announcement that I want to make sure that you guys are definitely aware of. So, the first thing is on, Stillwater School. We have a Stillwater School program this year at Skacheen Lodge in beautiful British Columbia. So, for anyone that's ever wanted to learn Stillwater, this is the place. And your instructor is the one and only Phil Rowley. He and I have teamed up. We've partnered up to bring you guys a in-person, on-water, Stillwater School, and that's from June 24th to the 27th at the lovely and beautiful Skacheen Lodge out in British Columbia. So basically, if you've ever wondered, about the Stillwater fishery and how it works, the insect life, the lake life, different tactics, from subsurface to surface to indicator fishing, all that sort of stuff. Of course, Phil will do his fly tying as well, and what flies work for each time of the year and everything like that works on the Stillwater topic. So making sure that goes with you guys as well. So one of the really cool things is the lodge itself. I mean, it's $1,600 per person. It includes everything you can possibly think of, except for your fishing license. You're going to have to buy that on the government website. So all your meals, all your drinks, all your boats, rod fees, all that sort of stuff at the lodge is taken care of. The lodge offers 5-star food, super nice, beautiful setting, beautiful lodge. The accommodations are great. I can say this because I have been there, and that's why we're going back, because it's the perfect setting. It's perfect lodge. There's beautiful wild Kamloops rainbow trout in the lakes there. There's over 16 lakes. Each of them have their own private boat on them. So if you're out, you're fishing, you want to take after the course, you want to go and fish your own private water, that's totally possible to do so. These are amazing. Like, I can guarantee you're not going to see another person on that lake. So it's just you and a friend or your partner, whoever it is that you want to bring with you, if anyone. And it's just, to have a lake by yourself, to smash these massive rainbows that just fight like tanks. It's so wonderful. So again, that's June 24th to the 27th. It's a 4-day, 3-night program. It's at Skacheen Lodge in beautiful Kamloops, British Columbia, and it's also, Phil Rowley and I are putting that on. So again, that's the Stillwater School. One of the ways, if you guys are interested in learning more about this program or doing this program, and it is going to fill out because we only are limiting it to 12 people, is to reach out to me via DM, reach out to the lodge, that's Skacheen, SKITCHINE, lodge.com, and sign up for the Stillwater School there. Or, of course, you could always reach out to Phil Rowley, flyfishing.com as well as another option. So these are all great opportunities. It is going to go fast. Make sure you get yourself in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing you. It's, again, like I said, an amazing opportunity if you've ever wanted to learn Stillwater, or if you do know Stillwater and you do want to brush up on some skills and learn from one of the Stillwater pioneers and legends, Phil Rowley. All right, guys, let's get back to the show. Hey, fly fishing insiders, we are here with Togen's Fly Shop, and Justin and Stanton are back. Hey guys, what's up?
Hey Greg. Hi Greg, how you doing?
Great. Justin, what's new for Togen's in 21?
For 2021, we've come out with a full line of Togen's tools, starting with our all-purpose scissors up to our tungsten carbide series, along with ceramic bobbins, aqua pliers, and just everything you need to get started tying.
in Stanton, as a pro team tire, how does this benefit people?
Well, these are really high quality tools. The scissors are ultra sharp, able to cut threads, cut wires, get your thread right close to the fly, like on a small chironomid, like a size 18 or even a 20. I'm really enjoying one particular product I'm really enjoying is the hackle pliers. They have a fantastic grip. I use them to tie to quilled flies on nymphs and or hackle. They're fantastic with various types of different hackle. They really hold the hackle really well. I think people are really going to enjoy them.
Perfect. And Justin, where can we find these tools?
You can find the full collection of tools on our website at togensflyshop.com.
Excellent. Let's get back to the show. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Keenan. This is Season 3 of the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. In this episode, we aim to bring you the biggest and best stories from those who work and make our fly fishing industry truly great. The Fly Fishing Insider Podcast dives deep into the past, present, and future of all our guests, uncovering their amazing stories and journey. Join us each week as we interview a new podcast guest. Also, if you're new to the show or not yet a subscriber, make sure you hit subscribe after this episode. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Purest from Purest on the Fly. So, Purest, you know what? I'm kind of excited that you're here. I mean, we get to talk about the industry, you being an industry person, myself as an industry person, and we get to share, about what your platform's about and educate people. We are going to have to call you Purest for the show, just to continue to protect your identity on that. So, and I don't actually even know the full name here. So it's kind of cool how, to be honest, I mean, it's really cool, how transparent we are on this. So for sure. So Purest, tell us, let's jump into it first. You have an Instagram account, Purest on the Fly. You guys, what is it about?
Yeah, it's mostly about raising awareness and just kind of calling out industry things that are very off-putting, and it's mostly from I'm not like 30 or 40 or anything. I'm 25 years old, and it's mostly from my generation. We're seeing a lot of these kind of crazy trends, whether it's like using a fish as a phone or, selling CBD products to people that are probably around that same age or even under the age of where they could consume this product. That's just many of the examples that we see. And we see like awful fish handling. If I posted every single awful fish handling post that I got from my followers or just I found, I could just be like bad fish handling 101. Like that's all my account would be.
Yeah, no doubt. So why did you were you part of building this account? Or are you one of the members of the account that built it? Walk us through that. Is it your account?
Yeah, so originally it started out, it started as a couple of us. There were like two of us. I was one of the first ones. And then it was one of my friends who's a guide in the industry, and he's a little bit older than I am. And he kind of was joking out with me like, man, COVID is so boring. Idaho at one point had like shut down guide trips or had very strict regulations and trips. And we're like, man, we should just like do this as like a joke and just, see what happens. And it was never meant to be like as big as it has gotten now. It was always meant to be more of a joke and kind of just like make funny stuff that we see on the river and make fun of people and poke fun at like influencers. And we never expected to get this big. And then kind of as guide season kicked back up, he had to leave and, he was guiding all the time. And I'm not in that situation. I work a normal 9 to 5. So basically I took over for most of it, and he still sends me ideas and things every once in a while. And there's been people here and there that came through and, they'll send me a couple memes and things like that that I know that are friends that know who I am. That's kind of how the account started. It was basically COVID boredom is really what it was.
Yeah. Okay. But you mentioned about, fish handling, and fish handling is not really a joke. Do you know what I mean? The way we ethically hold fish is not really a joke. So that's kind of where the focus kind of went, right? With with the account and the, you know what I mean, and drawing the attention. I mean, I think the biggest thing is for me is I'm just gonna have to level and lay it on the line with you here is like, yeah, your account calls people out. And, you know, it will call out myself, it'll call out the next guy or anyone. It just calls people out and it calls them out. What do you hope to achieve by that? Like, what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, there's only so much awareness and so much you can achieve by like positive, like whether it be keep fish wet, any sort of university or biology studies on things. And quite frankly, people don't read those and they don't care. And a lot of times it takes people a little bit of a push or a shove to kind of wake them up to what they're doing to a fish, what that does to that trout, in most cases biology, and a lot of saltwater fish as well. And we take a look at all of that, and we kind of basically said, hey, let's start calling people out on this. It's not something, how do I say it, that we were super proud of it at first, but as we kind of like started looking into it more and as we became more educated, it was something that the account really became based off of. And, you know, that's kind of where like the cancel tailing gloves movement, you know, take your gloves off, you know, you don't need a hero shot. That's kind of a lot of things that we really hammer home now because here in Idaho, for example, a lot of people use gloves still to handle steelhead, which we don't have a lot of. We're record lows for the last 20 years. And you're killing native steelhead for no reason other than you want to take a picture. Like, to me, that was kind of the breaking point, I guess would be the term for me, where I was like, something's got to be said. And we can't just sit silent here and watch our fisheries struggle, and then human intervention doesn't work, and you know, humans are essentially killing fish unintentionally. And a lot of people, they don't know that they're doing it. So I get a lot of messages like that, you know, throughout the day, or I'll get a comment somewhere like, "Hey, I didn't know this was bad. Thank you for raising my awareness. I'm not going to do this anymore." So that kind of validates what we're doing. We're not just going out there and, you know, picking fights with people and not educating them. We're trying to be nice about it. But you know, if someone's going to go off their rocker about it, we'll let them know, and you know, we'll put them on blast for it, because those are the type of people, like, we shouldn't be looking up to those people when it comes to trout handling or steelhead handling or any sort of fish handling.
Absolutely. You know, it's kind of cool because you did say, you know what you said in that segment there was you're bringing attention, but you're doing it in a different way, because, you know, people do realize they don't read the reports. They don't read the scientific data because it's not exactly interesting. Do you know what I mean? It's not a fun read.
Yeah, it's really boring.
Do you know what I mean about fish mortality rates with with a mesh glove versus, you know, a padded fleece glove? It doesn't matter whether it's a rubber glove. You know, the fish mortality rates and stuff like that. So the fact that you guys call them out, it is like a wake up call, and that's really how I see it, as a wake up call. As nasty as it sounds, you know, and some people might be like, well, what, you know, like, this is terrible, it's nasty, or you know, it hurts their feelings. Do they get it? Like, do the people do you get a percentage of people that, you know, when you call them out, sit there and say like, hey man, you know what I mean? Like, I know you said some people message you, like, what would you say the ratio is of people that get it?
I would say it's a pretty good 50-50 split. Most people kind of get the idea pretty well off, and there's about 50% who will message me or they'll comment like, hey, you know, this happened. Sorry, we didn't mean for this to happen. Like, we weren't thinking, you know, obviously you're right. You know, we get a lot of that. And then sometimes we just get people like, oh, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing wrong with this. We've been doing this. You know, my grandfather's been doing this since, you know, 1920, you know, handling gloves with fish and stuff. So we don't, I mean, there's a good mix. The people who are more resistant, typically I maybe post 10% of the people who get upset about the handling, I would say. Because sometimes, you know, people will just straight up delete the comments and just block you. That happens quite a lot on the account. I take pride on my account of never blocking anyone, regardless of, you know, what you say and things like that. Because at the end of the day, really, we want to foster discussion on all these kind of topics. And we don't want it just to be one big echo chamber. If someone would come to me tomorrow and prove me wrong that tailing gloves did no harm to a fish and there was like 10 studies out on it, I would say I'm wrong. You know, I have no problem saying that. And the people who upload the account have no problem saying that either. That's something we've always been very cognizant of, is that we don't know everything and we don't claim to know everything, but there are certain things where we feel like we're the experts and we have a good handle on those kind of things.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it validates, you know what I mean? Like, you are open to discussion on it. and that's super important. It's not a closed-ended subject with you guys and what you're doing. You're definitely open to discussion, and like you said, if someone can prove you wrong, you'll eat your words. And I commend you on that. I think that's great. So, for sure. Now, like, what are some of when you guys are doing this, and like, how do you get this content? Is it just from searching the internet? Are people sending, or anonymous people sending you photos? Like how are you finding these images of people doing wrong things?
So at first, when you're a smaller account, it started out, just searching kind of like the Explorer feed, looking through hashtags, FFBI, the Fly Fishing Bureau investigation. We would jump on some of their stuff as well, because they gained a lot of traction doing very similar things to what we're doing. And eventually it just turned into, we got such a big following that I don't have enough time in the day to go through every single poor fish handling photo. I really just try to take the most egregious ones. And that's saying something, because it's gotten to the point where we get so many, and it kind of shows how prevalent this issue is within the industry. And, it might be a first-year guy who has no idea what he's doing, or it could be, a 70 years, 80-year-old man who has been doing this for his whole life. It doesn't matter to us. And occasionally, I'll see stuff on Facebook, and I'll take a screenshot and post it every once in a while. Especially if it's Idaho related, it definitely gets precedence. That's just because that's where we're from, and we like to raise awareness on it, and also show that the fishing is really bad out here, and you should never come to Idaho to fish, and that we can't take any more people.
Yes, I have heard that twice. That's funny. That's funny. Okay, no, so that's what you do with people, you know what I mean, with people and whatnot. And you're trying to educate people. What about brands? What about brands that are jumping on this or not thinking? Like, I mean, obviously, and here's the one thing I've learned about brands is that, the social media person, sometimes these bigger brands hire different companies, and you know what I mean, like they outsource their social media, or they just do so to someone that just doesn't get it. You know what I mean? Little Susie in the office there, hey, take over the social media because we just don't have time. And I get it, right? Like, no offense to Susie, but she just doesn't, you know what I mean, isn't involved, or she's just the accountant of the brand or something like that. So what about brands that are jumping on and doing this? You know what I mean? Like, what's the action on that? What's the reaction from people, that you've seen, or when you do this, when you call out a brand?
Yeah. So brands, a lot of time I will get 10 messages about a brand before I even see it. And a lot of these brands I follow, there was an instance with Thomas & Thomas that they had a glove picture, and they took it down and immediately were like, yep, this is not right. And then the most recent one that happened was Cortland, where they had, it was an old boot of a salmon in the Great Lakes area that was probably on its way out of life. But, they had a picture of a gal with a tailing glove on and things like that. And I just said, hey, this isn't very good. And then one of the other accounts, or someone else, basically messaged me and said that, hey, this is what they messaged me. And basically Cortland just told them to bug off, and not in a very nice way. And it was not very professional on their end. And I posted that on my story, and people were very not happy with Cortland. And I know some people in the industry who are much bigger than I am, and just have an awareness of who I am. They said they reached out to Cortland. And the funny thing is, I commended Cortland because they actually doubled down on it, and they deleted all the comments, and then they promoted it, sponsored the post. I was like, dang, these guys are really doubling down. That takes a lot of cojones to do that. So I actually kind of was like, well, this is the hill they want to die on, or this is what they want to promote. Yeah.
Hold on. Wait a sec. So they posted a picture of an influencer holding a salmon on its way out. So it's probably a black salmon on its way out. Yeah. Tailing glove on. The industry and people like consumers, like Instagram people, called them out on it. Cortland told them to F off in a different way, and maybe not exactly that, but told them some kind of thing. You posted Cortland's comments or reactions to that person that called Cortland out, and Cortland took the, I'm just trying to recap here, took the word, took the comments, deleted all those, and spend money to post that ad.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I can send it to you afterwards, just as proof and things. They have since deleted it because I think bigger industry folks.
How does someone think about who has their job still?
I don't. That is one thing too. I don't like to call for people's jobs and things. I don't want this guy to get fired or
No,
crap
I know,
guy to get
but,
fired.
like,
So it's just one of those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things where you're kind of like, man, like what are they really doing over there at Cortland? And I grew up fishing Cortland lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just crazy to me that a brand that I really took respect for, kind of did that and then just doubled down on it.
Yeah.
So I was not particularly proud of that. And I know the funny thing was too is they deleted all the negative comments and then pinned like all the ones that were basically saying like supporting the use of tailing gloves and saying, oh, well, you just don't want to drop it on its head and stuff and all this. And I basically at that point I kind of just I logged out on that one because until someone told me that they had sponsored it and then now have since deleted it. So that was kind of where I logged out on that, and I don't know where it's at now.
Yeah.
They do have Purest. They have Purest block now, of course, because they got a lot of hate from that. So.
That's funny. I'm sure you have a lot of people that are blocking you guys. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of brands that don't like us. That we can go on and on. Mostly not fish handling related. I would say 99.9% of brands are very cognizant of what's going on, but occasionally, you get like a 20-something with a marketing degree. That hasn't really been fishing for more than a couple of years. Yeah, they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. As long as they're taking it down and they understand that, hey, like this was not cool. We're not going to do it again. Like Thomas and Thomas got killed on theirs by like multiple people, and they took that down within like probably 2 hours of it being posted. And Trout Unlimited did the same thing, but with some tailing glove pictures as well. And that was probably 4 or 5 months ago, and they immediately took it down. Like they realized kind of the message they were sending after the fact.
So, again, like it's super important to recognize that, and you know what I mean, for sure. And I think that's, that takes it out. And again, it makes everyone think twice. It makes them think about what they post, whether it's validated to, whether it's warranted on Instagram as well. Does this post really need to be up here? So kind of cool. Mm-hmm. You mentioned something too about, with the brands and, brands blocking you and all that sort of stuff. Obviously that's not your intention, but I mean, how do you guys handle with that? Like, how do you guys like deal with that when brands block you? You guys sit there and you're trying to call out a brand and they are like being like Cortland. Like I'm sure that's happened not just with Cortland, but with other brands. Like, how do you guys deal with that? Like, do you reach out to them or do you try and give them a chance?
A lot of the reps from the major like A-level companies follow me, and kind of I'm able to speak to them pretty frankly and honestly. Most of them, occasionally I'll post something that they disagree with, but for the most part they agree with me. And there have been certain brands, I won't say who, have blocked me and then unblocked me, and I follow them back and things like that. And it's okay, and it's all kosher. For the most part though, like it's mostly the brands that are really trying to make that leap from like a C-tier, A-tier brand that really dislike the account, because as the account, not only do we talk about fish handling, we're kind of, I wouldn't say anti-influencer culture, but we don't want we call people out for selling out the industry for things like CBD or beer or seltzer, like hard seltzer. We call people out for that because, I mean, that has nothing, for the most part. I mean, beer, of course, on the river has something to do with it, but for the most part, like, that doesn't have anything to do with fly fishing. I would rather you be trying to sell like your own flies or anything like that. Okay. Obviously, I understand people have to try to make their living and stuff.
So yeah, I wanted to go down that hole as well. So let's talk about that. Influencer marketing within fly fishing is kind of ridiculous. And I know like one of the coolest things that I like about fly fishing, and this is a bit of information that I've discovered because again, being a business and stuff like that, there's not like, you can't really go to like Scientific Anglers and say, hey, give me this link code and I'll link it, because they don't fucking do that because they support the shops. Do you know what I mean? Right. And maybe I can think of 5 shops that probably have like link codes and stuff like that, but I mean, really it's not worth it, at the end of the day, because like it's just not worth it. Like you're looking at it, and that's one of the coolest things about the industry is like there's no link code for this unless it's some new shirt company or some new, what I mean? Like it's just, something that's like not really tangible to, or something that, in 5 years might not be around. Right. There's a couple, online brands that have that or have their sponsors and stuff. But I mean, like in general, the big companies, you know, you don't see Nautilus doing that. You don't see Hatch, you know, here, link code this, save 15% on a Hatch, right? It just doesn't happen.
Right.
I respect that within the fly fishing industry. And, you know, that's one thing that I can tell people, you know, as a brand or as an influencer, if you're trying to influence in the fly, it's going to be hard for you. It's going to be freaking hard for you because there's no codes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and just getting into like a pro staff with a company, and most companies, you know, a lot of these big companies like Sage, Orvis, all these big companies, they don't have a unlimited marketing budget that a lot of these smaller companies seem to have because they have whatever funding it may be from, you know, their dad or, you know, this big investment firm and things like that trying to break into the market. And these companies, you know, for maybe, you know, for 10 sponsored posts or whatever, they might be able to give you like a free rod, and it might not even be like a Sage X or Helios 3. It might be like a Recon or like a Foundation or something like that. And, you know, these companies, these bigger companies are established, you know, they're trying to play catch up with a lot of these little companies that, you know, they hire 420-somethings straight out of college who know all they've known their whole life is social media and how to manipulate algorithms to make sure that they're at the top of all of those, and what drives clicks, what drives engagement, and what gets those people into the sales funnel. And, you know, these companies, I mean, obviously they've been around. I mean, Orvis, I mean, I can't remember how long they've been around. It's been forever. I mean, my dad was fishing Orvis before I was, probably before I was born.
Sure,
so was my grandfather.
I'm sure he was. But,
right. Yeah.
So yeah,
you look at all those things, yeah, and it's a shame because a lot of these companies, like, I'm sure they sell quality products, but the claims they make are just outlandish and just not true.
Okay, we'll definitely jump down that hole in a second, but I want to touch base on this influencer thing. So, I mean, if someone's new trying to get into it, like, honestly, like, trying to influence, like, it's really hard. Like, the only way you can influence, in my opinion, in fly fishing is to do your own thing. Am I right or wrong? Like, I mean, you can be, unless you're pro staff, right? Or an ambassador to, you know, Winston, right? You know, it's hard to, like, why would you influence? I mean, you can talk, like, I do free posts for brands all the time. I do, hey, like this Winston rod because it's freaking great. Or, you know, like this reel because it's great. Scientific Anglers. I 100% endorse their fly line. I'm not getting one nickel from that. That's because I like it, the product, right? I'm not saying swipe up code 15, you know, fly fishing 12, whatever it is. I mean, I don't even know how to do that stuff. I know about it, but I don't know how to do it in this industry because it doesn't exist. And I think it's a great protected point. And this is where I'm going to go with this because I know you guys call out. So are people trying to cross over other products that are unvalued in the like, I don't do CBD gummies. It's just not my thing. You know, even though in Canada, we're up here in Canada, hell, you know, forget the CBDs, go straight to the pot. I mean, the whole country you can smoke it in. So, and, you know, I just don't do that. But, you know, we look at it like, why are these influencers trying to bring that crap into this industry?
I think it's because these companies have a huge financial backing from what I understand in the research I've done and from what I've heard from people who have been offered these type of deals. They just throw money at the problem and throw money to get people to get that first touch, to be the first people to touch the CBD. And for whatever reason, this isn't just exclusive to fly fishing either. This is hunting. This is just general sports. This is like basketball players. This is everyone. It's not fly fishing exclusive, but it is very concerning the fly fishing industry, especially for a lot of these accounts for younger people who their target audience is typically around like that. I would say like 15 to like 23 age, where a lot of those kids, for lack of a better term, can't use these products legally. And I think that's the biggest concern. That's the other thing about selling booze that I'm like not.
So ethically,
booze
it's wrong.
has always been sold. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if they think about that, but you see the big paycheck at the end of the day. I think a lot of these people seeing they want to live a certain lifestyle where instead of, you know, grinding your teeth guiding or working in the shop filling fly bins and things like that, they don't ever get to that point.
But that's where you start in this industry, or you build something, you do what I do. You build a podcast. You work every freaking day. Do you know what I mean? There's ways to start in the industry. There's a million ways to do it. But pushing products, I mean, I have seen ads, like crazy ads for, you know, dog treats. You know, I've seen like dog CBD gummies. I've seen ads for Ace Home Hardware. Like, I mean, we don't have an Ace Home Hardware up here in Canada that I'm aware of, but I do know it has nothing to do with fly fishing because I don't buy my stuff from Ace Home Hardware. If there is a fishing section in there, I've never been to an Ace. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, it's irrelevant to me. But then I look and I'm like, wow, like that ad from that influencer received, 100,000, whatever, thousands of likes. Like, are people just brain dead, or is this what they want? Like, I'm asking you, is this what they want?
I think it's, again, the conversation I have with industry people, and I think that this is very true for this, is that a lot of people are fly fishermen, and then there's a lot of people who like to fish. And I think most of these influencers are people who like to fish, and that, if something came along that paid them more money and they didn't have to do fly fishing influencing or try to be that, they would jump ship immediately. I mean, we can debate that all day, but there's just this culture in fly fishing right now that if you're like a young millennial Gen Z person coming up, it's expected for you to take as many hero shots as you can and then try to get a sponsorship from whoever it is and trying to make a living that way instead of, like I said before, being a guide for 10 years, being a shop rat, trying to come up with your own patterns so you can be a royalty type fly tire and things. And that's not in the culture anymore. It's like, what's the quickest way for me to gain attention and make a little bit of money off of it? And I think that's kind of where those companies kind of fill that gap, as they enable those people to basically live off of sponsored posts.
Crazy. And you know what? I can, contest on the back end too. We've been reached out by many influencers have sent us messages saying, hey, like, I want to get on your show. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because we have over 100,000 or 50,000 followers. And I'm like, but what have you done? And well, I'm a part-time guide, or a guide in Colorado, or I do this, and you sit there and you're like, well, this, there's a million guides out there. Like, what makes you special besides your 50,000 people where all you're going to do is plug CBDs on my show? So it just doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's funny because we do that. So we actually, I personally say no to that sort of stuff. So I kind of agree, and I know where you're going on that, down that hole. So, and I know, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, fly fishing, maybe this is where my purest quote is coming in, is like, fly fishing is so much more pure. We're not so NASCAR like the hunting or the sport fishing industry and things like that, where a lot of these brands, that's like just kind of normal to have out there in a lot of these brands. And, whether there's like half naked women within the brands and things like that, but fly fishing has generally avoided that. And that is the kind of the big hole in the abyss that I don't want fly fishing to go down. And I think most people would agree with me that they like to fly fish because it's a classy sport, and we don't have to justify ourselves, why all these girls in like bikinis and things are catching fish or shooting wild pigs, and taking a look at that and saying, like, that is what we don't want to be, even though it's slowly creeping into fly fishing very slowly. But most people, I would say that, and I don't think it's a market that will really flourish within fly fishing, but it's something like I would rather not get even close to it if we could.
Dude, the moment I start seeing people put fishtails in their mouth, I'm gonna lose it. I'm seeing people in the duck hunting industry, or in the hunting industry, they're covering themselves in blood, and they're a heart in their hand, and they're pretending to bite it, and they're half naked, or they're naked standing behind their hunt. Like, what the hell, man? Like, I mean,
that's really weird.
Dude, I just don't need to see someone naked on the bow of a skiff. You're holding a fish in front of them. You're holding in a permit.
Just holding like a giant Goliath grouper in front of them, just like, hey, what's up?
Exactly. Like, I just don't need that. Like, could you imagine? Like, if fly fishing goes there, like, we got problems. Like, actually, you got some work to do. That's what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, we would have a lot of work. This account would be blowing up way more.
Could you imagine? Wow, it's just, I'm really pleased. Everyone, I plead with you. We both plead with you. Do not go there. Do not go down that road. So, definitely. No, I know. You know what? I often see you guys. I often see your memes on picking on brands, and whether it's financing a rod over a really long period of time at X amount per interest, or whether the rods are made in, as you often call it, Wuhan, China, or Korea, or wherever they're made. what is the fascination with that? Because there's a lot of rods that people don't know that are made over there as well, from other brands that aren't so picked on. We'll state it that like let us know what that's all about.
So there's a lot of brands nowadays that are making these rods that are in very, for lack of a better term, they're sketchy rods. If you've ever learned anything about rod building and where they're built, there are certain factories in Korea and China that are exceptionally good at turning out these very high-end blanks. Echo, TFO, Loop, all of these big brands make budget and mid-range rods over there because, quite frankly, you can't make a rod in the United States for under $600 and sell it and make any money off of it. Mm-hmm. And what basically happens is that these companies come along and say, hey, we have the next best rod, blah, blah, blah. But they're not even making it in like a very reputable factory. They're using older, for the most part, from some of the rods I picked up from these companies that I have casted. I'll be the first one. I've cast them. I've tried them. I'm not just saying this because I don't like the brand or the marketing. Yeah. Personal testimony, I can say it's old technology. I fished this stuff when I was a kid, when I was in the 90s, whether it's IM6 or IM8 graphite. Like I can tell that kind of stuff. I fished enough rods over the years to know that. And don't get me wrong, one of the biggest things on my account is we call it the Echo Base Gang, which is like everyone on my page really liked, well, not everyone, most of them like the Echo Base, which is an $89 rod from Echo. And it's made in Korea. It's a stiff, like very heavy rod, but it's like indestructible and it's great. It's a great rod. Yeah. So, here's the thing is that rod outperforms most of those other, like what we call Wuhan rod brands tenfold, and it's half the price. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, hey, I'm gonna admit I have a few Echo Bases as well, and I let my kids use them because they're so cheap, and if if they let go of it, well, I'm not crying. Do you know what I mean? I'm not out a Winston. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Like, and that's why I do it. But I have casted an Echo Base because I cast it out for my kids, and it's a great rod. It holds up. The other rods I have never casted. I just haven't had. I don't even own them, right? So, what I'm wondering is like you've compared them. You're based on your knowledge, based on your casting, you're stating that the Echo Base is better performance than these other rods that are 3 times more money.
Yes, I would full-heartedly say that. Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah, there's no. I mean, even going like to the Carbon XL, which is a great rod. I mean, those are definitely better than them by tenfold. I mean, the Echo Base, it's a really heavy, stiff rod, which also that is one thing about me. I like a heavier and stiffer rod. I don't like kind of like this new ultralight. I just bought a Sage X. I'm like, it's okay. To me, I like a heavy, very fast rod, and that's where the Echo Base really gets me going. Is that that's what it is, and a lot of these other rods. I mean, they don't have a lot of, I believe the correct term is feel in the tip and things. Like even on those Echo Bases, you can kind of still have a little bit of feel in the tip. These rods, I mean, I've casted a 5-weight in one of them and like a 7 or an 8 in another, and I was not impressed with anything. They were extremely heavy. They're laborious to cast, and I was just not impressed. And I mean, they're not using. I could tell just from the guides by looking at some of them, they over epoxied a lot of them. And it looked kind of funky, and I felt like that was kind of screwing it up a little bit. To me, there's a lot of things. I mean, that's quality control. That's another thing. When you're buying from these big brands that make rods in Korea and China, there's good quality control. Mm-hmm. Whenever they're saying they're like a small batch fly rod company, but they're buying 5,000 rods at a time, it's not really small batch.
No, it's not. It's definitely not like a custom builder. You know what I mean? Like Tom Morgan, rip it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. A rod a week. I look at it and I'm just like wondering here. I mean, but these accounts that have these rods, like, why are people buying them then? Why is this knowledge not out there? Why are people supporting them? Why do they have such a following? And furthermore, like, how do they have such a strong hold in the industry? Like, it's kind of puzzling, right? So there's got to be some.
Yeah, they have probably the.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, they probably have the best marketing programs of any of the companies, and it's really targeted towards newer anglers. Like if you look at a lot of these ads, I mean, like the one that I keep getting on Facebook, every time I go on Facebook, is the one with a text message and saying, "Oh, check out this new rod and it's super cheap. You can finance it." I see that probably 3 times a day because I'm on Facebook just, checking in on family and whatnot. And then, I see that. And then, certain other rods, they do like really cool videography for some of them. And they pick people with interesting stories, but really don't have any, I guess you would say, industry clout, but they just have a cool story. So, they get that, and it's really geared towards, younger people. Most of their ambassadors and pro staff, if you want to call them that, are younger people, and that's who they market it to, because these people getting into the industry, they don't have $300 to spend on like a lower end stage and things like that. And you look at, that is one thing that I think that the bigger brands are missing out on, is the lower end market. And that's kind of where these people fill in. And then there's like, the TFO Lefty Craze, there's the Echo Bases that kind of fill that in from the bigger brands. But people are like, well, this brand is saying that this $200 rod is just as good as an $800 rod. I think I'm going to go with that. And quite frankly, like, I can't blame those people for falling for that. But at the end of the day, like, if you don't really know what you're looking for and what you're casting, you're never going to know the difference between an $800 rod and a $200 rod.
I guess I can agree with that to agree. Obviously I know about rods, but if it came to, brakes for my car, and my mechanic's like, here's these $800 brakes versus these $200 brakes, but both are going to stop. So in rods, both are going to cast and both are going to catch fish. One's going to stop you, a few seconds quicker than the other one. And you're like, but it's not really going to make that much of a difference. I'm going to go with the $200 brakes, because to me, it's like, it's brakes. And I guess anyone that's getting into fly fishing, I guess I can see it, because it's like, they don't realize the addiction yet. They don't realize how much they're going to be out, how passionate they are. I've bought stuff, for my kids, because they're all gun ho, and like, 13 days later, I'm like, whoa, they're out of the sport completely. So, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
So maybe that's the concept. So I do agree also with what you said is the rod manufacturers, and they are missing the mark. They're 100% missing the mark on that lower. The race years ago was to get to the higher end market, or that $1,000 rod market for sure. But in doing so, they are missing out on that lower market, because there's, Walmart was founded on the whole theory of there's a lot more people walking around with $5 in their pocket than there is with 50. So
right.
Like that's kind of something that I agree with. I think that the rod companies should look at that, and it would give a fair run, or a fair at least a fair run to these other manufacturers for their money, for sure. So,
yeah, and I think a lot of these companies too, like, you look at the big Winstons and Thomas, like, I don't expect them to ever come out with $100 rod, because that's what they've built their brand on, is that you own a Winston, you own a Thomas.
You know what?
You're the elite of the elite.
I can speak to that, because I interviewed Winston. We talked about that, and they tried to come out with it as a lower end market rod, and guess what? It failed. And they said they will never do it again. That's legitimately on our podcast. That was remember the Nimbus, Winston Nimbus? It was a blue rod. We talked about that on one of my episodes with Winston. You can go back and listen in the library about, they tried it. They tried to do that, and it failed. The market didn't take to it, because there's something about owning a Winston that gives you that pride when you level up to there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or another brand equal. Whatever your preference is. But I get it. Like Sage, for sure. Like, they should have an entry level rod that's comparable to these other brands. So for sure, I definitely agree. Now, what about the financing thing? Like, like COVID times have come, people, you said yourself, these kids are between 15 and 25, and they don't have a lot of money to spend $300 on a rod. And, so the financing option, is it ethical? Probably not, because they're I don't know what the interest rate is that the people are charging on these rods, but I know you guys speak strong about that as well. What is it that you're, what's your standpoint on that?
Yeah, it's all about the ethical. My mother's a banker, grew up in a very financially oriented home, so I'm very aware of interest rates and what putting yourself in debt for something as measly, I say measly as a fly rod, but it can give you hours upon hours of enjoyment. Whenever, I think some of the payments, they started like $49. If you just save for 2 months instead and get yourself like a TFO Lefty Cray or a TFO Finesse Trout, Echo Base, I could name off all these, good brands with lower end rods that, they're going to get you into the sport. You probably grow out of them if you really get into it in about 2 or 3 years. But hey, it gets you on the water. You're not stuck in this weird financing deal that if you lose your job or money's tight one month, that you're going to get killed on interest rate and charges for late fees and things like that. And I think that a lot of people, when they see that, I can get a fly lad for $49 a month. Like that sounds great. It's just like, you can finance a car or lease a car for like very similar, lease like a brand new Mercedes for like nothing sometimes whenever they're running the special. It's kind of the same scam. And to me, it's not a scam because you are actually getting a product, but it's more I feel like it's a trap for people who are trying to get in the industry, because then they get stuck with this rod that, they don't really like, or, once they get it, because most of these rod companies don't have, like local retailers that sell them. They're like, they're called factory to consumer, I believe is what the term is.
Yeah.
So you never get to actually test it and see what it's like to use one of those rods.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, and who buys a rod without testing it, right? Or at least knowing of it or researching it extensively and, casting your buddies that might have the same one for sure. I definitely see that. So what about rod? Like, I know you've also, you've casted these rods, and there's, industry stories or rumors going around that, quite often these rods will blow up. And I mean, we've heard about these stories and stuff like that. What, in your experience, have you, has that been true? Is that like, where are you at on that?
I definitely could see it happening. I've only just heard from certain people in the industry who know a whole lot more about rod design and what goes on at those factories, to know that certain brands had an issue where the tips were exploding and things like that. And then one of their new selling points is selling 2 tips with a fly rod. And they act like it's revolutionary, but bamboo's been doing that since pre-World War II. So I don't understand that marketing. Is it really cool? Yeah, I think that's great that our rod manufacturers are selling 2 tips with it, and a lot of companies are trying to follow in suit, or they'll do like, hey, if you break your tip off your rod, we'll get you a new one there in like a week. I know Orbis just did that. Echo just opened like a shop for the same thing. So it's really cool that that's kind of pushed the industry in that method, or in that way to keep up with, these smaller brands. And one thing I will say, and I will commend all of those smaller rod companies that I don't like a whole lot, their customer service for the most part, I have never heard terribly bad things about them. Like I've had so many horror stories with large companies where I'm like, yeah, I just didn't see my rod for like 7 months. They like lost it, and they found it, and then they sent me one, and then I broke it a week later because I'm an idiot, and then I sent it back and I waited another 3 months for it. I mean that happens all the time. But these companies, they will, someone breaks a rod tip, someone breaks a rod, they'll send you a new one out the mail the next day, which that is probably if I were those companies, that would be the only thing I'd be trying to sell, is that the reason that we're so good at what we do is because our customer service beats any of the big brands. And, and if you can keep that and sustain that, I think you could really build a very good brand off of that.
On the customer service, which is so key.
Yeah.
So key. For sure it is. And the cool thing is like, as long as you keep up that customer service, you don't have to really like disclaim anything or compare yourself to anybody, because your customer service is so fantastic. You don't have to say this is like an $800 Sage X. You know what I mean? There's no.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's awesome. I like that you pointed that out. Definitely.
Yeah, there are things I like about those companies. And it's like I could take 3 pieces from one and put it with another, and I had some capital. That's what I would push as a rod. And the one thing that does bother me, I guess, about it is they say assembled in the U.S. and not made in the U.S., which I think it's kind of a misleading term, because assembled in the U.S. basically means they took it out of a bag, they stuck it in a rod tube in a sock, and then they're able to say assembled in U.S., which to me, I think that's kind of shady. But I mean, that's just something personally, and maybe some people won't agree with me on that, because I know a lot of companies, there's still big brands say that, and that goes for any brand. That's not just the C-tier companies, but some of the A-tier companies will say the same thing. And sometimes those companies, it's very hard to find out where they source their blanks and where they source their graphite. And I find that, I think, to me, as someone who I don't prescribe to only buying American. I like to buy American where I can, but I'm not going to pass up a good deal, and I'm not going to pass up good performance, because I think the G Loomis Ace Clip is like made in Korea, and that's always been one of the top rods for fresh salt and things like that. Yeah, and it's made in Korea.
Yeah.
You know, you can't argue with that. I mean, the loops are the same way. They're great rods. They're made in Korea and China, or Korea, I think. I don't think they're made in China. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But those rods are fantastic, and they're made in Asia. So I'm not here just saying, oh, don't buy Asian rods. I mean, personally, I am Asian, so I can't really say that. So you know, it makes it a little funnier whenever I'm like making fun of these Asian rod companies, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Asian, by the way. So you know, I get a pass. You guys can't call me a racist for it.
There you are. That's hilarious. So we're learning more about you. We'll get the whole identity by the time the show's done. So, you know, I want
there you go.
there you are. I want to ask you. So, like, with the account, with you know where you guys are going, what you're trying to point out, what you're trying to do, and this is kind of like I'm giving you your opportunity because I know you get the bad rap, right? You're always the bad guy, right? And you're not trying to be the bad guy. You're just trying to, you know, show the other side of the story, right? Where do you want to take the story? Where do you want to take it next? Where's the focus for you next? What are you trying to educate us on next? If you have, you know, a direction or a trajectory with that.
It's kind of our biggest education that I've been pushing forward to personally on the account is kind of bringing awareness to like what influencers are doing. And Huge Fly Fisherman did a great video not too long ago. So shout out to Ben. He did an amazing video of like the reality of Instagram and what these people are doing in order to achieve these massive fish and these pictures and things like that. And I think that's like really our next big step. It's not necessarily attacking these people, but it's calling out, you know, going out on the river, you catch a 20-inch brown trout. You're going to keep it in the net for 10 minutes because you got to change your clothes twice. You know, you got to yank the nymph, the dry fly out, put a streamer in its mouth. You got to, you know, get both sides of the fish, and that fish is probably going to die because you wanted to get a little, like 10 followers on Instagram for it. So to me, that's like where we're kind of pushing, and we're kind of localizing a little bit more. I've been covering a lot more Idaho stuff, specifically kind of in the southwestern region, which I'm trying to get away from, but it's really hard because, you know, this is where I put my roots down and really fell in love with fly fishing out here all over again. And, you know, it means a lot to me. So we're trying to get away from that and be more global. One thing we don't touch at all really is European. The European fly fishing, like if you look at some of the handling pictures on European fly fishing, my God, it's like, it's bad. And I mean, most of those people are keeping their fish. So, you know, that's kind of why I don't touch it. But, but a lot of the time, like we need to, I think as the account, you know, we're trying to, you know, we're still going to do memes, you know, we're being more selective about them now. We're not just spamming 10 memes a day like we used to. But we're trying to, you know, bring a lot more awareness and kind of turn this account into more of a awareness and educational thing instead of just, you know, making funny memes and haha, that's why people follow us. We want people to be educated. We want people not necessarily to like us, but to understand why we're there. We're not just here to make fun of people. We're not here to just, you know, bully people. And one thing, I'll be flat out honest with you. There have been things that we post on the account that I'm not proud of, that we should not have posted and that we deleted either before people saw it or like, you know, an hour in, and, you know, we own up to that. If it's about a certain person and they don't block us by that time, we'll message them and be like, hey, we're really sorry. We didn't realize this was the full story. And that's why now we do a lot more research. Whenever we're looking into, you know, calling someone out or calling out a certain guide shop or a fly shop for doing something, we do our research now instead of just blatantly like take it at surface level and just run with it. We're more cognizant of that. And that's something, you know. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, like, how do you do your research? Because that's super important to say, because there's always two sides to a story, right? You know, you see someone with something and, you know, someone sees someone's fishing with gloves and it's like, hey, this guy's wearing gloves. Maybe he hasn't caught a fish all day. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know, maybe he's casting and there's not even a fly on his rod. It's just feather. Do you know what I mean? Like, because he's practicing his casting. Or she or whoever, right? You know what I mean? Or maybe, so that's what I was going to ask you. Like, where's the level? Because I mean, the world keeps sending you, or you know what I mean, your followers or the industry keeps sending you photos. You know, when's enough where you sit there and say, hey, this is a story, we'll run with it. And then how do you do your research on that before calling someone out? Because calling someone out or calling a brand out, or, you know, it's embarrassing and it's devastating, and it can be emotional for some people. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and obviously that's not what you're trying to achieve, is to humiliate them. if I said that right. I know that's not what you're trying to achieve. You're trying to achieve them to make them think twice and educate. And I think, and I believe that's what you're trying to do. I truly believe that's what you're trying to do. Not to sit there and embarrass them because you know what? Hey, end of story. It's done. It's cool. Now you know, right? I believe that's what you're trying to do. So how is it that you guys, my question circling back to it is, how is it that you guys actually authenticate these stories?
Right. So it used to be, like I said, we would just take a surface level and run with it. Now we've been moving towards basically reaching out to the person, being like, hey, what happened here, And most of the people who give, like I said earlier, like tailing gloves, for example, like maybe we'll just drop a comment, be like, hey, take the gloves off, man. And they'll, a lot of times, 50% of the time, which I feel like is a lot, they're like, hey, yeah, like this guy's new, like, sorry, like it's his first big fish. We weren't really thinking and stuff, and now we're aware and we're not going to ever do that again, or or actually think about it. And then there's other people who like I said, screw you, like go do whatever, do bad things, go play in the street. And those are the people that we call, or the people who are not only hostile and not willing to have that conversation, but also just in general don't seem to care about the fish well-being whenever there's tons of research to contradict exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. You're doing...
And there's a lot of times too, we'll DM someone too and be like, hey, like this, hey, we got sent this, just to let you know, like, what do you think? Like, hey, I'm not really sure, why you did this. Yeah. And typically we'll get a story and things. And, I would say 99.9% of the people that I DM where I'm like, I look at their profile too. I'm like, oh, like this person's like a generally nice person. Like they're not out here just trying to be, kill fish and just be a bad steward of the fish and things, and a lot of that is sniping. There is a lot of that goes on our page. Like a lot of people will send stuff in and like try to snipe people from 2019 or 2018. And I'm like, dude, I don't care about that. Like we want what's happening now. I don't care if someone used a glove in 2019 and now they follow the account. It doesn't, because now they know. Really, they know if they follow the account, and if they're still doing it, we'll call them out. We'll talk to them. But
that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah,
that's what I think everyone needed to hear. Was that what people have evolved, like from watching your account, and maybe it's like, hey, what, I did do that. Now we recognize, we realize it. We're watching other people going, oh, dude, I feel bad for you. You're called out. But as long as the message is out there, you know what I mean? And that's what you're doing. Then like, yeah, there's no point in bringing up someone's past if they've learned from it. Right.
Right. And sniping, like I've been sent so many people that have had like, there's like 100 pictures and then there's one where they're wearing like a Sims like sun glove and with a fish in it. And I'm just like, okay, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect. I've mishandled fish, I'll accidentally, whatever. Yeah, it happens, and, you're not thinking, like, I fish with gloves in the winter. Yeah. I take them off all the time now, but back when I was like a teenager, when it was cold out, I didn't take my gloves off. I'll be the first one to admit it, and I've learned from my mistakes, and I know that's not good, but, keep fish wet also wasn't a thing back then, and we didn't really know, and all that those studies and researches have really propelled kind of the account of being able to have a hard standard of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Absolutely. And we need that as stewards of the sport for sure. That standard and that level of standard for sure. Now, I mean, it must be kind of, and here's where I'm going to go with this next. Keep fish wet. We look at all that. Even let's translate that and cross it over from fly fishing into like the bass industry. I mean, where they're, the muskie, where they're gilling them and all that sort of stuff. Like, do you think you ever see yourself expanding into that area slowly? Like, I mean, the ethics on that are just horrible.
Yeah, I know for bass, I know I've done reading on it. Like for the most part, I don't really, the whole conventional fishing industry is just a whole different beast. Mm-hmm. It really is. There's a whole lot more of them, and there's a whole lot of more people who don't really care. And it is disappointing to see. Like I say on the account, we like to specialize in trout and salmon. So we like to stick to those. But at some point there might be, whenever, if I see like an egregiously posted bass, like, I forget what the actual degree angle is, like that you're supposed to hold a bass, like a big bass and things like that. If I see that, I'll call it out. Or some dude that's, gill banging like a bass or something, or gill banging pretty much any fish. I'm like, hey, like, that's not cool. There was a couple months ago, we had one on like a golden dorado that was someone just gill banged the heck out of it. It was bleeding like crazy and just like sunk to the bottom of the video. And the guy was proud of it. And I was like, dude, what is this? Like, how is this okay? And he's like, oh, it's just a fish fail, man. I'm like, okay, you had to go a lot further than just one fail in order to get to that fish, to that state of pretty much dead. It was dead. They would have been better off taking it home and eating it. And with bass, bass are much hardier too. Like, I mean, as a kid, I used to fish bass ponds, conventional rigs. Yeah. And, you could bring a bass, roll them in the dirt, give them like a nice, pan-cooked breading of just dirt, and he'd be there tomorrow just doing the same thing. Bass, I mean, I haven't done enough research on it to be like, yeah, this is exactly how to handle bass. I know, like, you can break their jaw super easily, but we haven't really touched that. I know muskie and pike are like a weird one. I'm trying to figure that one out. Like, a lot of people hold them by the gill plate. Yeah. Personally, I've never caught a pike or a muskie, so I'm kind of like, I don't really know what that does. I've never seen it in person, and I don't speak on it because I'm not an expert. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. So that is one big thing that won't count.
Definitely don't. And I don't want to put you in that situation. But I'm just asking. I'm just wondering if that's where, where it's going next. Because at the end of the day, we should be keeping those fish. We should be ethically, because it gives other people that are against the sport ammunition. Do you know what I mean? To shut down sports or shut down fisheries or shut down, and take away from our sport, right? Or, allocate funds for other things, whatever the reasoning, because there is those people that don't want to see us fish for God knows what reason. When, I know it's hard to say that, but that's the truth. The other thing I was going to ask you, like, I know with, the gear guys that are fishing for these, when I say guys, the gear fishers that are fishing for, say, like in your area, and like the use of like treble hook. I mean, do you guys have laws on that out there? I know in Canada it's like single barbless hook. In BC where I am, right? So I mean, do you guys go for stuff like that, like ethical laws, or do you dive into that, or is that something that you're looking for, going in the direction of?
For sure. No, we cover it a lot. I send a lot over. I'm good friends, I would say, in an anonymous sense, with Fly Fishing Bureau of Investigation, FFBI, and they cover a lot more of it. And that's kind of who if I see something really bad, I'll say something. For the most part, they cover everything pretty well. A lot of times, like if I see, in the United States, it basically varies state by state on water laws, river by river, water body by water body, of what kind of the rules are. And whenever I see, the one thing that really irks me that I guess would be in Idaho is native steelhead, so one with a non-clipped adipose fin. Whenever I see gear guys really mishandle those, there's a certain account out there that's like a guide company that that's a regular gear company. They take people out in Idaho for steelhead, and they just use like cotton tailing gloves for everything. It's awful. And I'm just like, that fish probably got infected and died, especially if you're getting them early in spawn where it's still a little bit warm out. Yeah. Where there's a lot more bad stuff that could, get them infected. I call those guys out a lot. For the most part, I'm blocked by those companies and accounts. They really, really do not like me because I drive a lot of negative traffic towards them because a lot of people really care about salmon and steelhead.
Yeah, of course they do. It's like the way of life. Yeah. We need it. The world needs salmon. Let me rephrase that. The world needs salmon to survive. I interviewed Mark Glansky on the book that he published with Patagonia, and the world actually runs on like salmon. Like we need it. It's so important to us, especially here on the West Coast too, right? But like Atlantic salmon, Pacific salmon, that's why we have it. They're, they're such an incredible resource to, the smallest bug to the top of the food chain, which is us. So definitely. It's funny that you talk about that with the gloves and the gear and all that sort of stuff. And, you guys are pointing that out. I know one of the things that gets me up here is like the whole flossing, and it's flossing for salmon or flossing in rivers. And that's where I was kind of going with that. And I wanted to see if you guys are acknowledging that, unethical fishing tips or, some of the gear rig contraptions or, fly contraptions that people have, it's a fly tied on like 6 treble hooks. You know what I mean? Like stupidity and stuff like that. Like that's the stuff that, that is beyond unethical. There's no, when you're tying that or you're tying that on, it's wrong. You know it's wrong. There's no,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like there's you cannot tell me, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, and a lot of those people, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be able to change their minds on that, because if you have that low of a moral ethical standard, I mean, me calling you out isn't going to do a whole lot. I will still do it, but if anything, it makes them more angry and makes them want to do it more. That is kind of like the fine line we ride, is that there have been people who are like, we've called out for, treble hooks and snagging fish and things like that, and they're just like, well, I'm just going to do it more because you called me out and you made me mad. So that is kind of the fine line we run. And that you have to be very careful. I mean, whenever you look at someone's profile, you also kind of look, are they a sane human being that if I say something here, are they going to go absolutely bonkers and just be extremely upset and potentially we do a lot more harm than good in that situation. That is something that we have to be careful of, that we're very cognizant of, because we had a few incidents with tailing gloves not too long ago where people are like, yeah, I'm just going to glove everything now. I don't care if it's a 30-inch steelhead or a 10-inch trout, I'm going to glove it now and just post it just to make you mad. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that's not being the bigger person at all, or being responsible.
Yeah.
And that is the fine line we run.
Yeah. So then you sit there and you withdraw because you're like, you care about the fish. So I get it.
Right.
No, for sure. Wow. What, I'm glad we had this conversation, Purest. I definitely am super, super pumped that you get to share your side of what you're doing, because I know, you get a lot of flack, man. And, a lot of people do not want to end up on your site. A lot of people want to follow your site as well. Cause you provide both entertainment and holy shit, I don't want to end up here, which is good because it's an educational thing, which makes you think twice, and you're doing it in a way that it's like, which I'm on board with.
Yeah.
I don't care if people.
I appreciate that.
I don't care if people sit there and say, hey, tailing gloves. I agree. I think they're bad. So you're calling them out on it because it makes them think. And the fact is, you do your homework, and you've admitted on here that you've done your homework. So if someone's done their homework, and you've also admitted on here on the show, just to recap, that if someone has better data on and can support the facts of tailing gloves and all that sort of stuff, doesn't harm the fish, you're willing to have that conversation, you'll eat your words. So with that said, I mean, hey, last word is yours, my friend. What would you like to say to the listeners out there?
Thanks for having me on. Of course, follow me on Purest on the Fly on Instagram if you ever want to see any of that. I sell some cool stickers. I guess I'll plug those. I don't want to sound like too much of a sellout, but I sell those. Greg, hopefully you'll show up soon, and the Postal Service gets their act together.
Yes.
And really just, do your research. Don't be afraid. If you have a friend that's out there, really mishandling fish, do it in a gentle way. You don't have to be like me. You can go up and say, hey, buddy, I just think this is not good for the fish. Do it gently. Don't just go up and yell at them, obviously, because they might not be your friend anymore. But hey, try to educate people in the best way you can. Don't. A lot of people on the account will like to scream and shout at people and stuff. I prefer a more gentle approach. Occasionally you'll get something that really, really grinds my gears, but definitely if you have friends that you see mishandling fish or using a tailing glove, just say, hey, that's not good for the fish. Here's, keepfishwet.org. And, let them know, and just, let them learn on their own. That is one of the best ways that we can spread our message without it having to come to the point that someone gets called out on one of the multiple fly fishing accounts, meme accounts and awareness accounts that there's out there.
That's right. It's good to point that out. There is other accounts out there. I don't need to mention the names of them right now because you guys all kind of work with each other. So if they're following you, they'll learn what the other ones are for sure. Yeah. With that said, a word from our CBD sponsor. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You got me there at the end.
you like that? I thought you would. So, all right. You know what, Purest? I definitely want to thank you, listeners. I want to thank you guys as well. So, all right, guys. I'll see you guys next week. You've been listening to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, tell us by liking this episode and subscribing to the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. See you next week.